Publishing multiplayer video games is really fun until the player base breaks one item that's really good and you have to go in and change the code to fix it. Unfortunately, with Magic, you can't really take it back.
Afraid your card gets banned? Sell it on Cardmarket now.
Today, we're looking at the top 5 fastest bans in Magic the Gathering. Because let's be real, when Wizards messes up card designs, they can't adjust it really.
Yeah, it's too much of a feel, but it's really unfortunate for physical cards because it's really nice to play with game pieces. But once they're out into the world, they take a while usually before banning cards. Sometimes it takes up to a year, and people have sometimes complained. But generally the reason for this is sometimes people over-exaggerate at first and they need to see if the card actually needs to be banned.
Never.
Oh, I over-exaggerate about breakfast, so I definitely over-exaggerate about how cards should be banned. And
The
also,
internet
it feels bad if you have this game piece of this card with pretty art and you like to play it and you build a whole deck around it.
And you paid money for it.
And you paid money for it and then it disappears.
So, Tafel, what's your guess on the 5th shortest duration it took for a card to get banned?
2-3 months.
All right, that's not too far off. Our number 5 here to start us off is Wiota, Joiner of Forces. You probably remember that because I know we play tested a bit for Pioneer and that deck was a pain.
The games lasted 3 turns.
They really did. Wiota lets you put in a human creature from your deck every time you attack with a non-human creature. And not only that, it lets you do that for every non-human creature you attack with. So yeah, you're gonna have some really strong humans on the board really quickly.
How did those games usually play out?
Well, it finished in that turn most of them. They also gained indestructible, which is kind of absurd because like...
Oh, as if they looked at it and they're like, yeah, this needs to be better.
In case you want to block them. Yeah, so I remember we tested that for Historic because we had tournaments. There was Agent of Treachery with kind of you can't even kill it because it's indestructible, and then you have multiples of their permanents. You drive in cards sometimes.
When you hit 1 or 2 of those, you just steal their land.
You also had a lot of mana creatures that you get early, and then you can attack with those creatures because, well, you attack with a 1/1, but that turns into a good human. It's really crazy.
Yeah, and it didn't even, like, it's not like the creatures needed to connect or anything. You just threw them at your opponent. Like,
To be fair, I can see how the designers could have missed this because usually if you have a lot of human creatures in your deck, you don't have a lot of non-humans to attack with. And usually, if you have a lot of non-humans to attack with, you don't have a lot of humans. And also, if you think of a creature type that is not overtly powerful, they're usually costed between 1 and maybe 4. It's humans. You're not cheating on that much mana.
She would have said dragon, maybe. It would have been a bit more obvious.
It would have been more obvious. Anyways, now that card stayed legal for a whole lot of 24 days on Arena because coincidentally, at the same time, Brawl was semi-introduced to Arena. It might have been around for a bit longer already, but that's basically like Arena's version of Commander. And it turns out when you have Wiota in your starting hand every game, that's no fun. So barely over 3 weeks. And then like a month later, they also banned it in Historic. Once again, that was not a Commander-based format. That was actually a competitive format. Also too strong there. And then 2 years later, they also banned it in Pioneers. So yeah, the card is now basically not really playable.
Even with a larger card pool. So if you told me there was a list of the cards that got banned the quickest, and you told me the top number 1 was 24 days, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But no, there's 4 more that were banned even sooner. And this one was banned in 17 days. Can you guess? I'll give you a hint. Some people say it kind of looks like Narset.
It did look like Narset.
It did look like, is it Omnath?
It is Omnath. Omnath Locus of Wrath did not last in both Standard, Brawl, once again, a Commander style format except 1v1.
Yes,
and if your opponent always has an Omnath,
it's all the legendary creatures.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very good.
But man, that card is also ridiculously powerful. Like,
yeah, a ban in Standard that short is very rare. 17 days in Standard. I mean, it wasn't a whole month after it was released that they're like, okay, yeah, we made a mistake here.
Though there is the point of, it was still the pandemic, so a lot of people were grinding Standard on Arena because that was what was available to most of us, right? Like sitting at home, not going to the LGS, doing stuff like that.
That's a really neat difference between old Magic and nowadays. Nowadays, cards get generally banned a lot faster because more people are playing because you can play online. It used to be that you would play 3 or 4 times in an evening, you would go to an event, you would wait to get paired, sit against someone, shuffle, talk to them, wait for it to end, go have a snack because you finished
Yeah, I
early.
remember there was a tournament where the top 32 had 23 Omnath decks.
Nice. That sounds like a balanced
Usually
card.
you think if you add 4 color types to a card, it won't be played in many decks. But the thing is, it was so powerful and the mana was so good at the time that in ramp style decks, you could easily just put Omnath. Omnath would give you more mana. You would play more things.
That was also the expansion where they released the tri-lands with subtypes. So the mana was...
It was also at the time where you had a fetch land that would go get basics. So the most broken thing you'd do is you'd play it on turn 4 and turn 5 or turn 4 with a mana dork. You play Fabled Passage, trigger it, fetch with Fabled Passage, trigger it again. You basically had played it for free at that point.
When they announced the stats for the cards, that's always fun because you are sure that some cards are very good, but you're never sure what the data says. They said it was a favorite against 9 out of 10 decks that didn't play Omnath in the format.
Wow.
So naturally you had to play Omnath. The people, when you play online or in your LGS over a certain amount of games, you never know how sure your sample size is because you get many, many thousands of games to be sure something is correct. And when do you do that as a human being?
This was also a time where they're really trying to push online play. It was the pandemic. They're like, we're putting all our cards into Arena. Let's make it really popular. And if every time you queue up, you always face the same 4-color Omnath deck that is really, really repetitive gameplay.
It's also a very tough matchup to play. Long games, very grindy.
And they gain life. It just, oh.
Then again, that sounds like a matchup where like really grindy players that would really want to get into the gist of it in the mirror, like you can probably make some plays happen. Nowadays, if you want to get that Omnath experience, you have to head to Modern because that format can handle the power level of a 4-mana 4/4.
I remember even if I was winning an Omnath mirror, I would still drop because I didn't have the time. It cost too much out of my life to play it. It's like a cigarette.
Now, our number 3 stayed legal for a total of 10 days. That's how broken it was. And it not like Brawl, you know, one of those formats, oh yeah, it's a weird, funky rules interaction. No, it was banned in Modern after 10 days. That's Tibblies Trickery.
Oh, the fun card.
Yeah. Now, I feel like the pandemic once again contributed here because everyone was playing online and the metagame got solved really quickly. But Tibblies Trickery is such an innocent card. It's a 2-mana red counter spell that counters a spell and then instead its controller reveals cards until they reveal another non-land card that they then get to cast.
Yeah, 99% of the people who saw this as a bad counterspell, and 1% saw it as an opportunity.
I mean, the way the combo works is you play a 3-mana Cascade spell, and then you Cascade into the only 2-mana spell in your deck, which is Tibblies Trickery. Luckily, Cascade is on top of your original spell, so you counter your Cascade spell, and then you mill a bit, and then you hope to hit Emrakul, which was the only other card in your deck. If you hit another Trickery, you're not gonna have any fun this game, but if you hit another Cascade card, you can do the joke again, or if you hit an Emrakul, you just cast the Emrakul.
What happens then?
You get an extra turn, and the 15/15 flying trample.
Annihilator 6.
It's absurd.
This card also stayed online for a while, and I think most people hated it, not because of how powerful it was because it was way less consistent, because you'd Trickery into an Emrakul, but you had other cards in your deck, you didn't Cascade into it. So most of the time, you would play against your opponent, they'd cast Trickery, and either they would put an Ulamog into play, or they would quit.
Yeah, like Arena didn't have the Cascade cards, most notably, so that made the deck weaker, so you had to actually include 0-mana spells to counter with your Trickery then. On turn 2, to be fair, because Cascade was only on turn 3, but the pure Trickery Ornithopter thing you could make on turn 2. What an unfun card.
Yeah, I feel like no one played that deck for fun. Like, you'd play it when you'd be on the toilet on your phone on Arena. I would play against an opponent, and I was always certain that they would be in their bathroom if they're playing this
It's your
card.
daily fix of randomness. Ding, 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 ding. I remember they even mentioned specifically in the announcement that it was not banned for the power of the deck, because the deck actually didn't have a win rate that was bannable, but it was just not fun.
I mean, it's not how you're supposed to play Magic. Even with combo decks, you can usually interact with them on multiple different axes, but this was just a single card that they needed to resolve, so yeah.
I'm happy it's gone. We're closing in on number 2 from a time period I specifically remember because I was there when it happened. Well, I mean,
You were there before Magic.
I was there when
I
all
would
of
be
those
very
happened.
worried.
No, I followed it live because it was such a special thing that a card got banned so quickly that I remember it like it was 1999. I don't know. So right now we talked about modern and all those formats that are good right now from recent history. But this one is an eternal format. We're talking about legacy. We're talking about vintage, where they use the cards to do, well, broken things. But everybody does broken things. So why would you ban cards? But that card was specifically broken. It was Mind's Desire. But the new ones of you know, wait, isn't it legal? Can I play it? No, yes, you can play because apparently now it's fair again.
Power level has caught up.
Well, maybe you have some better counter spells like Flusterstorms or something, but back then, if you turned into your turn 3 7 spell Storm deck, which is achievable,
Pretty reasonable.
Mind's Eye Diamonds, Lotuses, Moxes, all the things, Dark Rituals, well then you just won.
So how many turns did it take for them to ban the card?
7.
7 turns. Is that
If you consider turn 5 minutes,
0.9 days. So it was legal for about 6 days until the ban and restrict announcement said, no, that's too good.
so this was played in Storm. How would this card usually play out that would make it so strong that they had to get rid of it immediately?
So actually that is why the deck name is Storm, because of that mechanic, and it comes from the set, from this very card, because it was the first time that mechanic was ever printed. It basically says for every spell you did in that turn before, you reveal the top card of your library and you can cast that for free. Now, if you've cast a lot of spells, you can basically look through half of your library. You could play Dark Ritual that makes mana, Chrome Moxes back then. I mean, in Vintage you have all the mana.
And then if you hit another Mind's Desire, you can do it again.
That is correct. And you even get to Storm multiple times. And then,
yeah, of course, because Mind's Desire makes you cast even more spells, which, oh my goodness.
And then you have a lot of card draw. The mono blue decks played High Tide, which made your islands make double mana, and then Turnabout, which untapped your lands. And you usually, from a Desire from 5 to 7, you have, I don't know, 80% win rate or something.
Honestly, that doesn't sound like a deck that I would desire to play against.
I'm pretty sure that you would have played that deck until it was banned, which was apparently 6 days.
My favorite thing about playing against legacy players, just to reignite some trauma, is to, on turn 3 or something, play my first spell and just start a Storm Count.
For no reason.
Storm Count 1. They don't even know why.
I'll cast, I don't know, an Oko Storm Count.
Ponder. Storm Count 1.
Current
I mean, Ponder is believable.
Yeah.
Storm decks do play Ponder. Before we get to number 1, we do have 2 honorable mentions that were kind of too complicated for us to include in this list because there are so many reference points and dates that we didn't know how to define them. So you be your own judge. Head to the link in the pinned comment below. Read all about it on Cardmarket Inside.
Also, if you've been wondering what that small rectangle, white rectangle with a question mark, that is either here or here on the YouTube video, if you click that, it's a direct link to it. They are pretty cool. One of them was retroactively banned.
And that's why the timeline is so weird that we didn't want to rank them ourselves. In the meantime, let's get to the definitive fastest ban to ever happen in this game. It didn't take a day.
It didn't take a day.
It didn't take a day.
So it took more than a day?
It didn't take an hour.
Uh-oh.
Now, once again, you could argue about points of reference. When is a set released? Because if you take the release date, it took negative time. But if you take the announcement time of the card, like the spoiling of the card, it took like 5 minutes. Lutri,
Okay.
which is a companion, was announced and the card was clearly broken within the world of Commander. And so within 5 minutes after spoiling that card, Sheldon Menery actually tweeted about the card and that it clearly would end up being banned in all of Commander.
Why?
Companions was a mechanic that brought alongside it lots of joy.
A well-balanced mechanic
Lots of
with
joy.
absolutely no issues.
So much joy that they were actually errata. Now you need to pay 3 mana to put them into your hand. When they started out, if you fulfilled the requirement, you just got to play with them for free.
But fun thing is, it doesn't say that on a lot of the cards.
It's a
And
mess.
still half of them are banned everywhere.
Yeah. And so the requirements are usually things that you needed to work really hard for because it's so powerful just having another card, access to another card in your competitive deck. Now, Lutri's requirement was that you play each card only once.
Which, in standard or modern, that's a really big requirement.
Yeah.
One of each card?
That's crazy, but you know where that's not a requirement?
There's an H in Highlander, in EDH.
It's absurd. It would have just made it immediately into every Commander deck.
So the announcement happened and then there was a tweet and then everybody knew like,
Wait, so
Maybe some even saw the tweet.
Do you think they planned on banning it, or did Sheldon's tweet get the card banned? That was a lot of power.
No,
From
they
a very
must have
powerful
informed
man.
him before. They must have realized that card is problematic. And then there's the commander committee. And they make the decisions, but they go like, yeah, just to let you know, you're gonna have to ban this
I
card.
assume the decision was made beforehand by the commander committee, but I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't, informing people about Lutri, but what a wild requirement. I don't know, this is like a requirement that says your deck must contain Black Lotus for, for vintage or something, I don't know.
Pretty weird that you print a card where half of your Magic audience can ever play.
Yeah,
Kind of funky.
but
I mean, they print a lot of very bad cards that no one ever plays.
That's true. I mean, half of them don't play Colossal Dreadnought. I don't know why. but-
right. Why would they print? I mean, I know why they print that
I mean, they
card.
only
I
print
just
it to
don't know why
play it.
people don't play it.
Exactly.
So there you have it, the fastest ban ever to happen. You have to decide whether it was like negative 14 days or whenever the spoiler came out, or 5 minutes after the announcement. There's 2 more examples of really difficult to judge bans in the pinned comment below. And in the meantime, if you think someone else would enjoy this video, share it with them. But we'll see you in the next one.
So I'm now wondering if you print something in Future Sight that will be banned, but it was already banned, but then reprinted.
Oh no, we've created a time loop.
I'd argue it's minus 20 years.
It is.
We're all part of history that has and has not happened.
I say it might be a fixed event in time.